Hey, hi, and hello. Nick here from BPM Create, coming at you today with the top 5 key elements you need in every single drop. So let's get right into it. Okay, so the drop. It's a pinnacle of every single electronic dance track you've ever heard of. In dance music, mostly everything revolves around the drop, so that's kind of why I thought it'd be a good idea if you're just getting into music production and you figured out, hey, I need to make a drop, right? You're making that step from playing other people's music to making your own, then you're going to be able to kind of utilize this information in a way that will help make sure you have every base covered when you're producing your drops. So right here, I'm in Ableton. I have a full mix demo from one of our sample packs at BPM Create. This is just out of one of the construction kits there. This is kit number 4. So let's give it a listen, and then I will talk briefly about each of the elements involved here. So pretty straightforward, like dubstep, bass music-y drop, which is all fine and dandy. No, it really doesn't matter what kind of genre you're making. The elements that we're going to be discussing play a role in dubstep. They play a role in house. They play a role in psytrance. They play a role in pretty much every electronic music genre. So, I mean, you can definitely you might have to twist a little bit, but you can apply this information to any of the genres that you're producing. So let's look at the breakdown here. The cool thing about the construction kits with the sample packs at BPM Create is that everything is broken down into the pieces from which the song is constructed, hence the name construction kits. So what I've done is I've gone into this construction kit, kit 4, from this particular sample pack, and I've separated everything into the 5 key elements of that drop. And you might be looking here and you see drums, percs, synths, sub, and you're like, Nick, that's only 4 groups. Well, there is a 5th group, but it's kind of integrated into the synths group. So we will get to that. So first, let's look at the drums. Let's solo the drums and give the drums a listen. And when I say drums, a lot of people are like, oh, drums and percs, aren't they the same thing? Or don't they belong in the same group? Well, I tend to think that the kick and the snare are their own kind of entity in dance music because they take such a higher priority, in my opinion, than let's say the hi-hats do or the little cowbell does. You know what I mean? So that's why I think they could be considered 2 different elements because they both behave in very different ways and serve very different purposes. So let's listen to the kick and snare here. So straightforward, a standard kick and snare for this type of a genre. The kick is nice; it has some good body, and the snare has some nice high end. So here you can really understand the relationship that the kick and snare have with each other. I mean, it's really that straightforward. So that's your first element done. You've got your drums, kick and snare. They're kind of chugging along, making the structure for which everything else kind of fits within. Then, after that, let's give a listen to the percussion. And the percussion, or you'll see here I have a hat loop and a ride loop. And the hat loop isn't really a classic hi-hat in the sense of like what a hi-hat would be. It's kind of a little metal-y percussion noise that was looped into a hi-hat loop fashion. But You'll hear what I'm talking about. Let's give those a listen. So, again, pretty standard. Now, the magic really happens when you solo both the drums and the percussion together. You really start to understand the groove of the drop. And with that, you have your drums and your percussion. You have your whole kind of structure for the song that revolves around kind of the beat. I mean, this is the beat of the song. This is the beat of the drum. This is what everyone bobs their head to. It creates that kind of rhythm in which everyone can remain in this consistent headspace. So we've looked at drums, we've looked at percussions. Those are our first two key elements of the drop. Now let's get into pretty much the meat and potatoes of any electronic music record, which is the synths. Everyone always talks about the synths, and the synths make the song, which they do. Without the synths, it would just be drums, which are cool but not that cool. So let's give the synths a listen. So you can hear each individual part kind of separated out from the original song, and I'll just quickly touch on there's four kind of different synths happening here. I'll touch on each one. Okay, so with synths, we're talking about call and response, and that's kind of like the synths are having a conversation together. So it's like a question and an answer sort of situation. So here's the call or the question in this song. You hear it right off the bat. And again, that's the question. And then here's the answer. Here's the response. So they each kind of are saying their own thing. Now, when you listen to them together, much like we did when we soloed just when we had the synths the first time around, you can hear the synths talking to each other. You can hear them having this conversation, these questions being answered. So it almost sounds like an argument, which is cool for this kind of music. I guess it's aggressive and it makes sense. These other two things here are almost accents. You can see that they're not as dominant. Not only are they not as loud as the other elements just by looking at the waveforms, but they also happen less frequently. So this one is kind of a just like a little something to listen to at the end of the phrase right here. It gives your ear kind of something new to break up the pattern of this top line, which is playing majority of the time. Then you go down here. Let's listen to this guy. So what this is doing is it's actually just creating a little bit of a groove. If you listen, it's acting more like a drum than it is a synth. There's really no melody to it, but it's also kind of chugging along. And I'll play the metronome with it so you can kind of feel how it's acting as it's acting more percussively than it is melodically. You can hear how the that last synth is kind of adding a groove to the entire line that wouldn't have been there if that synth was absent. Now when we listen to everything back together, you'll get the idea of kind of what each element is doing and how it's interacting with the other elements. So that's synths. That's our third element. Our third key element of every drop outside of drums and percussions is synths. That's what's taking center stage in your song. This is usually where a lot of the time and effort goes in. Things like sound design, all that stuff really plays a major role in the synths. Now, while I'm here in synths, we're going to talk about that hidden little fourth key element, which is effects. And this particular pack doesn't have a designated effects loop. Sometimes there are like little like wishy-washy white noisy things or whatever. This one, interestingly enough, has the effects printed down because it's called a reverb throw. There's a lot of reverb throw effects here, and I'll just point one out. There's multiple examples in these stems, and if you have the pack, you can check it out for yourself. But a reverb throw is basically it's an effect that happens during a time of absence that keeps things interesting. simply put. And all it is just the automation of a reverb going up and kind of letting the sound drag out into this abyss. And then it usually cuts off pretty tight in this kind of genre. So if you listen here, you'll be able to hear how the reverb throw was integrated into this synth loop. You hear that? It's right here. Let me get just that track for you. Hear that little... That right there is a reverb tail extension of this sound. Right? So without it, it would just end like that. But with it, it actually has the ability to go... And that in and of itself is an effect. So these are kind of ear candy pieces that get thrown in, whether it be, sometimes they're separate samples, like I said, like white noises or drones, ambiance, that kind of stuff. In this particular example, it's an effect in terms of reverb. And again, that just keeps they're subtle things that keep the listener engaged and make the pattern more interesting, the pattern or the melody more interesting. So drums, percussions, synths, effects, and last but not least, you've got your sub. Your sub is, dance music is a bass-driven music in any genre, right? Having heavy low end is a very distinct style of dance music. So if we listen here, if you're listening on, a phone or something like that, you might not be able to hear it. There's a little bit of distortion that this sub loop was processed with, so you can hear some of the harmonics if you're on a phone or if you're on a laptop, but the best place to listen to this obviously would be with headphones or with a subwoofer, hence the name sub. So here's the sub. It's a straight note that goes in the pattern of the drop. It accompanies the drop to give that low end push that you feel as you're walking into the venue and or as you're sitting in your car. Sub is less something, especially in this genre. Sub is less something that you hear and more something that you feel. And again, it behaves. This sub isn't offering anything melodically interesting to the song. It's not. It's offering something that is more rhythmically interesting. It's emphasizing the rhythm of the synth section. And if you listen to it together with the synth section, you'll see how it doesn't conflict with it. It actually accompanies it. Let's solo both of those. And there you go. So all together with your drums, your perks, your synths, your effects, and your sub, all of those elements acting as their own kind of animals really allows you to have a solid foundation for which your drop can be built upon, or an environment which your drop can exist within. And again, this is something where you can take the ideas here and apply them to really any genre. Every genre, for the most part, I mean, I don't like to use such broad terms, but every genre, for the most part, has drums, perks, synths, effects, and some form of a sub. It manifests in different ways. It might be a Moog sub. It might be, synths from a Prophet, or drums from, a little drum machine or something, but they're drums nonetheless. They're synths nonetheless. It's sub nonetheless. So you kind of take this information and gear it towards whatever genre you're interested in working in. And it's really that easy. So that's it. That's the 5 key elements of every drop. I hope that you were engaged. I hope that you were able to learn something. And again, follow BPM Create at everything. Keep up with all of these amazing packs that are going to be coming out as time goes on. They're all full of construction kits. So many resources here. So I really, really encourage you to check those out, dig through them, and find those gems that are going to help you make the music you want to make and have the sound that you want to have. That's your voice. Once again, I'm Nick. I really appreciate you taking time to watch. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks. Thanks so much, guys, for watching. Hope to see you on the next one. Make sure you follow BPM Create so you can keep up with all of our amazing tutorials as time goes on. See ya.